All right, we will call this agenda priorities meeting to order for April the 1st. It's 3 p.m. and I will ask Councillor Heistad to please read the land acknowledgement.
Apologize. Where did it go? Oh, right there. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. Pardon me. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Heistad. And are there any additions or deletions? No, could I please have someone make a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I'll move that we accept the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Messaros. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we will move into our delegation. I'll have CEO Becker introduce our guest
As the
today.
delegation comes forward, I'd like to introduce Carla Beck, who's the CEO of the Bethany Group, as well as Melodie Stol, who is the stakeholder relations for the Bethany Group. As per Council's request, the Bethany Group representatives have been invited to speak to you, Council. Just for Council's awareness, a copy of the Council-approved Innisfail Housing Action Plan was shared with our delegates today, with the idea to discuss housing and potential housing opportunities.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me? And congratulations on your housing needs assessment. It was really well done, and Melodie and I have both reviewed it as well in terms of what we offer within the community. So just really here today to provide an update and hopefully have some good generative discussion on your housing needs and whatever role we can play with that. So wanted to share once again that Autumn Grove really is full on a regular basis. Of course, we have vacancies with people moving out, but they're quickly replaced by somebody else who is wanting to move in. And right now we have 14 on the wait list at that site. We also, in terms of the senior self-contained apartments, are completely full except for 11 units in between Dodds Lake and Bowden that are currently having renovations completed within those sites. We did get government funding for that, those renovation projects. And we are starting to work with Parkland Foundation in terms of researching the ability to transfer those adjacent lands next to Autumn Grove to Parkland Foundation or whatever approach will work best in terms of developing those lands. As you probably know, the continuing care transformation is moving forward, so we are seeing some changes, and of course the health system is changing in a fulsome manner as well. We're part of those discussions on a regular basis and hope to be able to see whatever might work within this community as something that we can promote and advocate for development here as well. We have already submitted an expression of interest for home care provision within the lodge itself. That was submitted in February of this year. And then in 2022, we also submitted, so it seems like a long time ago now, but we did submit an expression of interest for provision of an adult day support program within the lodge and have not had a response to that from Alberta Health Services either. With the changes going on, I expect that some of those programs will be revisited whenever the new continuing care organization is up and going. We are also trying to reach the mythical capacity planners in Alberta Health Services, just to try to have an idea of where they are focusing their priority communities, because you often will hear that this priority community has received approval. Well, we want to know where they're identifying those priority communities before we put a lot of work into a potential plan, and then they tell us that that's not necessarily something that will meet the needs here as well. And as we were saying to Mayor Barclay, this is really good timing for us. We're moving into business planning with Parkland Foundation in the next month. So hope that anything that we are able to hear from you here today, we'll be able to share at that table as well and see what we can do together. Do you want to speak about the Lodge program review, Melodie?
Sure. So the province has initiated the Lodge Program Review Consultation. So this is something housing management bodies have been asking for a number of years, and it's finally come forward. So they are trying to look at the Lodge program holistically and see how it can be transformed to still meet the needs of seniors and the people who need that level of support in your community, but also talked about things like funding. Talked about what it could be and what it should be. So it's a real in-depth conversation. Councillor Dunham actually attended the consultation session with us, was it last week? 2 weeks ago now? So I just wanted to highlight for you what the questions or the generative discussion that the province was having. So this is being led by consultants that are being directed by the Ministry of Seniors, Social Services, Seniors, Community and Social Services. So that's the division that's looking at it. So what they were asking, they gave a scenario to start is, in your community, if there was only private living independent options or AHS long-term care, but adults over 65 and older were looking for a different housing option, what would you do as a community to meet this need? So they were asking us to think, if you didn't have what you had right now, would you still build a lodge or would you build something else? I think that was a good discussion. Would you agree? Yeah. We thought transformative, trying to think transformatively. And we all know that the lodge does meet a really unique need, but what else could it be? So here in a community like Innisfail, is it some sort of hub model that offers more housing? In Red Deer, we've kind of seen them lean the other way, less towards health and more towards independence. But then as a larger city community, they can find that I want to say economy of scale, but they get enough people in a certain genre that they can build a building to meet everyone's needs. Whereas in Innisfail, you are probably looking at something a little more flexible because you're going to have people who want to stay in Innisfail but have more variety of need. And you really can't afford to build, well, here's a center for people with DSL-3 needs, and this is a center for people. You don't have enough people to build a whole lot of facilities. So the flexibility in the program is really important for rural communities. The next part of the session was talking about the LAP grant and requisitions. It was an interesting conversation. They did actually out and out say, what if they stopped doing requisition? But it's interesting that the operators said, well, if we don't requisition anymore, would we continue to have say on the local program and meeting local need? So it was good that everyone kind of recognized just saying there won't be requisition anymore probably wasn't the course that you'd want to go down if you lost a lot of control or the ability to say, no, this program is needed in our community. They would just say, well, we're paying for it and we'll put it where we want to. I do not know, and I will put that back to your CAO Becker, they didn't talk about having a consultation directly with municipalities about the requisition. So they talked to us and Councillor Dunham, they talked to you in wearing the hat of representing your housing management body. But did the municipalities get an opportunity to say, what do you think the requisition should look like?
Mayor Barclay, to the delegate, no, I don't recall that correspondence.
Yeah, we're not surprised that it hasn't come out, but maybe an opportunity maybe to poke around, because I mean requisition is something that you guys do deal with. You know, you get a letter from us every year saying here's your bill and just please pay it. But is it structured the correct way to meet the program need, and is it fair and equitable between the province and its supports? So it is a conversation. So if something does come across your desk, take the opportunity to reflect upon that, and hopefully, but I really don't know if they are offering a consultation process just for the municipalities. Look at Jean. She's like, Melodie's so optimistic. Because the next part of the session, we did talk about accommodation fees. These buildings, this program, the services, it costs money. The people who work in it, 24-hour availability of staff, there's a cost to that. So how should the accommodation fee be? Recognizing low-income seniors need a place to live too. So how can the fees be structured to be fair to all seniors, regardless of their income? But how do you also then meet the rising costs? Every budget we did this year had huge 8-9% increases in food budgets. You want to still offer nutritious, good quality meals, and the cost is just escalating. And, and we do work with many with a we have a purchasing agreement, and they'll get on the phone and say, do not change all your menus, don't offer broccoli this week because broccoli's gone crazy, right? So we do have those types of active things, but we're still budgeted a 9% increase in food costs. So how do the accommodation fees get set to make sure that the costs are covered? And then the final question was about health outcomes. How do you talk about health outcomes in a lodge setting, which is not a health facility? How do we talk about that? And how should home care services be provided? And finally, modernization of lodges and capital development. Mayor Barclay and I, we were all just speaking there shortly before the meeting, how truly fortunate the community was that you got Autumn Glen Lodge funded in the way you got it funded, when you got it. 100% capital cost was covered by the province. The Parkland Foundation was only responsible for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And really, a real blessing that came to the community for that, and it is so nice to be involved with this lodge, having a nice new modern lodge. That's a problem you do not have to face. You're not having a conversation saying our 1970s lodge isn't attracting people, and I don't understand why. You don't have to have that conversation. The room sizes are large, modern, it's bright, there's plenty of common space, and that's why things like, as Carla mentioned, the ability to offer adult day support program, we actually have space for that should the province ever get around to reviewing the call for the interest that's pushing almost 2 years from our applications. So that's just a bit about that part of it. And I don't know if through the chair, if Councillor Dunham wanted to add anything about his experience at the review.
I think you've covered it too. I was actually very happy when we got the questions that were asked, and I think especially at our table, thinking out, well, all of them, but in particular, just kind of thinking outside of the parameters that have existed, that outside of the box thinking and how we can move forward. So, yeah, it was wonderful, and I look forward to seeing their final report.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we do too.
So, yeah,
Any questions for us? Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Carla and Melodie. Does anyone have any questions? No?
Well, looking at your housing needs assessment, did you as a community, when you did your housing needs assessment, how did seniors land on that? Like, did you notice anything really landing for seniors? Or in our review of it, we really noticed a lot of talk about the working, people who may be working poor or or families trying to secure housing. Is that your goal? Or what did you think when you reflected upon seniors specifically?
Melodie, that there's a realization that we need housing across the whole housing spectrum. We know the demographics in this community, so we know that older adult housing is of utmost importance as well, whatever that might look like, whether it's supportive living, lodge, etc. But whether it's even independent living, and what does that look like? And I guess personally I also look at, well, maybe because I'm there, but you think of the baby boomers kind of moving through life, and we don't tend to we look at things differently than maybe the generation before us did. And so what will those housing needs look like as well? Because it might be very different than what we see currently. And I don't mean Autumn Grove, but I'm talking maybe, like a institutional kind of long-term care setting that has been prevalent for decades. So I think there's a lot of work that administration is and council is doing on housing at the moment, and looking at a lot of different options and where do we go, but you also need somebody that will build it as well. So obviously the site at Autumn Grove is perfect for something to be built out there on the rest of that land, and so hopefully someday something will come forward with that.
And has your work in the housing needs assessment, have any private land developers come forward talking about senior-specific offerings? So we've heard mumblings in some other communities about your size. You know, everyone, the senior self-contained program, very specific, super subsidized for your lowest income seniors. But is there someone looking at another part of the market? Are there people inquiring or kicking tires around the higher end market in the community? Because that actually is a consideration, because as we look, as we go through this process of what could potentially be on the vacant lands, sometimes they'll talk about mixed market. Well, if there's already maybe a private developer looking at the middle to higher income senior, do you know what I mean? You don't want to overbuild in something and then cause another problem, right, of high vacancies throughout the system. Yeah. Can I inquire on that, or?
Either, Director Jenkins or Tom.
And I guess I can comment. Council just approved last week actually a rezoning application that is a 12-unit building targeting seniors, and it would be mid to higher end condominium type of property. So that does seem like a very tangible development that we're hoping to see move forward. Even in the town's own construction that we're doing of a couple of single family houses, there are 2 bungalows that are very much targeting that sort of older adult, again on that higher end of the price market.
Those are good numbers too.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable amount. And again, that actually speaks to the community investing in, so those seniors clearly are choosing to age in Innisfail. So now maybe where's the service provision items coming in that Parkland Foundation could work towards?
I would say that they would like to age in Innisfail. We've lost a lot of people to Red Deer because there's not enough options here, without question. And, when we get into different levels of care, we now get people sent long ways away at times from their families, waiting to be moved back. And that's a horrible thing to have happen.
And you do find they tend to go to Red Deer versus an Olds? That's a question.
Well, when they're moving, Melodie, say they're moving into, trying to think of something like a, say, extended care with different levels of care. Certainly Olds, I think sometimes it's placement, so you get put where you're put. I mean, people will go from here out to Rocky Mountain House, out to Consort, out to all sorts of things. So that's a real burden on the family, and I don't know what the answer is. But I think as far as independent living, like we've had a lot of conversations around what that looks like, and even kind of pocket neighborhood sort of thing where you have this older adult enclave, and I think you're seeing trends in that. Probably looking forward, and everybody's going to come live here, and they'll all look after each other, because I don't know how many people end up in care, 8%, something like that.
Yeah, very small percentage. I think that's why it's nice to focus on what other services can we bring to the community itself. Would that hub type of model out of Autumn Grove be a good option in terms of people coming to access an adult day support program, or maybe some wellness clinics that could be located out of the building, coming for some meals if they're not able to get meals themselves within the communities? Those are some things that we could build upon with Parkland Foundation to support the community as well. We can't fix placement, but maybe somebody will.
Nobody can. And I don't know whether you're aware either, but there's also, McMahon was awarded a grant for social prescribing So that's a 2-year program, and that's underway, and I think it's going very well. I'm looking at our 2 FCS people in the back here, but so I think a lot of that work is taking place with various organizations in the community, and I think there's really been a kind of a model built out where community members, or I shouldn't say community members, but people with other organizations have come together and say, how could we support people living in this community? Home care, part of that. We have an age-friendly community committee, the town of Innisfail, and did the dementia-friendly community thing. So there's been a lot of work that's gone on with that, but it's so much of it is grant-based, right? The grant runs out, now what? End of 2 years, when the grant runs out for social prescribing, now what? And we saw that with the dementia-friendly community grant came to an end. That now kind of goes
No, nothing
to the side. So yeah, it's not sustainable at all, yeah.
Mayor Barclay, to the delegation, I think that's the idea, was to bring you in to learn and understand, but also bridge for the conversation of what's possible. And look beyond, I guess, this room and what else is existing in Innisfail and area to, to better serve the citizens and to, retain, attract citizens that want to live here. So my question would be, the willingness to have further conversation, knowing council, through their action plan that they developed, commits the exploration of stakeholder and partnerships, and just wanted to put that out there to you, and hopefully, I'm sure that's the case, but I just want to.
Yeah, we'd be
Speak
happy to
caucus.
collaborate with you, yes. And I'm sure on behalf of Parkland Foundation, I can say that as well. So both
Awesome.
Bethany and Parkland.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming today. We really appreciate your time and expertise, and thanks for looking after our people so well. At, yeah.
No, but thank you as always for having us, and yeah, our business plan cycle, it's the year 3 review coming up. Dawn's aware of the cycle, and Dale has taken over, and then the big real look at the body of the business plan, what we've accomplished, and where we want to go. That happens next year. So we do follow a cycle as prescribed by the ministry. So it's okay now in our, we'll note that this has been completed in affordable for Innisfail. We can add some little notes for this year, and then really to see how does it roll into next year as well, and how will funding or support come for that.
So that's really why these conversations, this is really timely to be able to do that for the fulsome business plan for next year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you so much. Have a good day. Okay, so we will move on to 4.1 and a staff introduction, and I guess
Sure,
Director
I will
Jenkins, yes.
introduce and then allow John to introduce. So we just wanted to bring John Powell, our new Economic Development Officer, into council for council to have a brief introduction. John started with us last week, so he's on day 5. Yeah, John, if you want to just give council a little bit of who you are and go from there.
I think you've done most of that. Good afternoon, Mayor Barclay, Council. I've had the pleasure of meeting with most of you over the last week, but for those of you who haven't met me, as Megan has said, I'm John Powell, your new Economic Development Officer. And as she says, I've made it to week 2. So yay. I didn't come far. I've come from the city of Red Deer. I was Economic Development Officer down at the city of Red Deer. And prior to that, I was Economic Development Officer in BC. But as you might know, this isn't a BC accent. No, I'm not Australian. I'm from England, but I've been here since 2010. So yeah, and I landed in the Okanagan and was Economic Development Officer down in Penticton in the South Okanagan, followed by Tumbler Ridge in Northeast BC. And I look forward to working with you all.
Okay, well, welcome, John. We're glad you were on board, and we'll better not ask questions. I was just looking at the CEO for that. No, yeah, no questions. Just
I've
kidding.
got most of the
I
answers
know,
already,
I know,
but,
just kidding.
but no, I'm looking forward to working on the power of place. So that was one of the big draws for me to apply and come to Innisfail. So I think that's a really big asset for this community. So excited.
All right, great. Well, welcome. Glad to have you here. Okay. All right, we will move into 4.2 and the request or the community and safety and well-being.
So I can do an intro to these gentlemen here. Council does know BASA Social Innovations, who helped us with the previous discussion, actually, with your housing action plan. Right now, BASA is helping us with the community safety and well-being plan, and with you today, council, is to give you an update on what's happening with this plan and next steps. But I'd like to reintroduce to you Scott Cameron, President CEO of BASA, as well as Avery Atchison, Research Associate, and he's been, I think, point of lead on this project. So over to you, Mayor Barclay, onto the I guess, delegation.
Okay, welcome, Scott and Avery.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Your Worship. We're happy to be here. We're starting to see the the goal line in sight on this project. And so today we're just going to provide you with a midpoint check-in and the final outline, the final steps leading up to the completion of this project. And for that, I will hand it over to Avery.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you very much, Mayor Barclay and Council, for having us and bringing us into your meeting today. So I'm just going to double check just to make sure screen sharing is visible. Just want to confirm.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Okay, excellent. So we wanted to come to you today to provide a midpoint review and update on where we're at with the community safety and well-being strategy, and provide you some of the community feedback as well as what we heard from the survey and what the next steps look like for the project. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start out by sharing a little bit of what we heard. Scott and I had come out and done focus groups and key informant interviews throughout the community. Those informed the content of the community survey, which will give you an update on some of the results from that. And then, of course, moving forward, what the plan looks like from here. So early themes from the community in having community conversations and engaging with youth, seniors, and general community members as well. Some of the big themes that came out as it relates to community safety and well-being were things along the lines of access to services, and that somewhat related to affordable and secure housing options. Those kinds of pieces came out. Youth engagement and activities came out strongly as well. There was opportunities for youth aged 12 to 20, reducing hotspots or increasing safety for youth. Community connectedness came out as a broad theme as well, being able to increase that community connectedness and inclusion, reducing the impacts of social isolation. Enforcement came out as an early theme as well. There was a call for increased enforcement, and so we wanted to once again use the survey to kind of test some of these pieces, and we'll share what that looks like. Homelessness and transients came out as well. There was a desire for increased managed, affordable, and secured housing, and strategies for dealing with homelessness and regional transients, right? The idea that people move from community to community, and Innisfail houses people that, are jumping from community to community, or at least are experiencing the need of having to go from community to community. And then, of course, the appearance and prevalence of mental health, so increasing those local or regional access to mental health and addiction services. Those were those like big pocket early themes that came out of community engagement. Secondary to that were some of the kind of sub themes that really feed into those pieces that we felt were worthwhile sharing as well and that are important to recognize. So one of the ones that came out was safety hotspots. That came out as a secondary theme. Certain areas of town that were mentioned with frequency during conversations that whether people felt were unsafe or had the prevalence or the perception of being unsafe. There was a concept of local reputation that came up as well, and that the perception and reputation of safety influences community dynamics, and that includes the attraction and retention of residents and businesses. And this really relates to, I think, some of the sharing, and you'll see this in the survey around sharing of successes and what the community really is experiencing, as it is quite a safe community, as we'll share. Resource allocation as well came out as a theme from the community. Desire where are we allocating resources to safety. Another underlying secondary theme was perception and reality, and that was addressing some of those discrepancies between perceived and actual safety. And that's through that accurate crime statistics, coordinated communication, and building trust in institutions. And I'll share a little bit about that as well as we come through some of these pieces. Underlying social issues as well, that there was a really strong recognition from the community that addiction and mental health are underlying issues that impact safety. And what's really important about that is the community very much recognizes that when we look at homelessness, when we look at transients, when we look at addictions, they're really the symptoms of some deeper issues around mental health or around addiction. And so there's really that understanding, which is really, really important when it comes to developing community-informed and community-driven strategy. And last, there was a really good piece around collaboration, connection, and engagement. There's a lot of community strength around connection between kind of regional municipalities, but also between service providers. And so there's a really kind of interesting opportunity to leverage that as well as we emerge through the strategy development phase. And that will kind of highlight in the next steps. So following the community engagement, we supported the Community Policing and Safe Communities Committee on their annual survey. And we created a little more robust questions this year and added a few new things to test both community safety and well-being to inform this strategy development piece. That also provides a really strong baseline for future surveys for the committee. Couple of highlights, or some highlights from the survey we want to share. So number one, there was a really great response. There was well over 340 respondents, which is really strong. It does provide an accurate representation of the community. And when we saw a wide range of people, including newcomers to Canada, Indigenous and Métis people, and members of the LGBTQIA+ community who responded. You can see in the age demographics, the majority of respondents were between the ages of 25 and 65+. Some really great highlights from the survey. 80% of those who responded feel a strong sense of safety in their home, neighborhood, and within the town of Innisfail, which I think is a really, really strong response rate. The vast majority of people feel very strongly that they are safe in the community, regardless of where they are. And 84% of people felt that Innisfail is as safe or safer than it was a year ago. Really, once again, showing there's a strong recognition that things are happening, the community is quite safe, and people are feeling that and expressing that. When we asked individuals to kind of explain what community safety means to them, there was some, obviously really strong areas that came out of that. But what kind of came from that is almost a little bit of an emerging kind of theme or definition for Innisfail, that a safe community is where you can move freely and safely, supported by accessible emergency services and a strong inclusive network of neighbors looking out for you. Values and prioritizes clean and well-maintained spaces and a proactive stance on safety and community well-being. This is kind of that collected feedback of 300+ community members informing what it means. One of the strongest pieces that came out was, hey, a safe community to me means that I can walk and I can move around my community and I can feel safe regardless of where I am. When we asked about some of the top 3 themes around personal safety or what impacts personal safety, 3 big thematic areas that emerged was a perception of unsafe areas and poor lighting came out. There was quite a few comments around, this is an area, there were some that were specific and added examples, which we kind of covered in that first piece around some of those areas. Others, it was, well, there's certain areas of town I don't go or don't feel safe, and some didn't provide that level of detail. However, there was also that call around, there's a lot of areas of town that we'd love to see increased lighting, whether it was alleyways or parks, sidewalks, but a lot of pathways came up as well as opportunities around that. A second kind of top 3 theme, or second part of the themes were around theft of personal property. You can see that in statistics reflected below, and also the presence of substance abuse and drug-related offenses, whether that's a perception or also the real presence. That's what came out for people. When we asked around, what are those areas a little more specifically, we had people identify. Property theft, vehicle theft, and property damage really emerged as those top 5, with over 50% of respondents indicating that is a concern for them. And then we saw the other 2, right? Presence of substance abuse, addictions, mental illness, as well as drug-related offenses showing up. When we asked, once again, we asked about satisfaction levels. It's another important indicator for the committee and for the plan is the satisfaction with community safety and enforcement services. So there's definitely some themes that emerged here that are really kind of important to highlight and things that are going to inform as we move forward in some of the strategic development. But overall, we can see that most people have, or at least the higher proportion for the most part, are relatively satisfied with the efforts of the RCMP and municipal enforcement. There is a large group. You can see the green band. The green band is people who are neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. And then the light green at the bottom is those who are unsure. Those really strong opportunities to move into that positive response category. They're individuals who are kind of sitting there. I don't want to say fence sitters, but people who are experiencing that kind of middle ground. I'm not too sure how to answer this. I'm not sure. So there's really an opportunity to move people into that positive realm through some targeted strategies. And that's hopefully what we'll be able to kind of support in the next phase. And we'll share what that looks like. And you can see from the disagreement, the largest group of disagreement is around if you've been the victim of a crime, were you satisfied with the police response to the incident? And once again, that's about a 21% that have a level of disagreement, which was definitely good information to receive, not a statistic that's going to be something that is really it's 20% is a significant percentage, wanting to understand that as well. And that's part of the satisfaction levels and how that can be improved in some of our strategies. Overall, though, kind of the key areas identified the community when we asked, what are some suggestions to increase the level of satisfaction with these different areas? The big key opportunity areas identified were staffing, resources, and the visibility of enforcement services. So being able to be more visible in the community, increasing that community visibility. And I know there's been strong work underway in that area as well. Training education for the public and for enforcement. This came out in kind of two areas. So number one, there's an opportunity for the training and the education of the public around public safety or what the RCMP and municipal enforcement really do. It's along the lines of how do we help the public understand clear roles and responsibilities, kind of who does what and how they approach certain things. As well as there was also an opportunity that was mentioned around training and education for enforcement itself. And lastly, technology and innovation came out as an opportunity by the community of how the RCMP, the town, or municipal enforcement could leverage technology and innovation in a different way for increasing the level of satisfaction or the increase of the impact on community safety. And some of that was around communication, right? There was some good opportunity of how the town and RCMP can communicate with the community. So how can they leverage technology differently, as well as some opportunities for enforcement using technology. The survey also allowed us an opportunity to ask more about community well-being, which is a little bit harder to nail, harder to define. However, the community came out. We asked, how would you define community well-being for yourselves? And the respondents identified that well-being in Innisfail means living in a safe, inclusive, and supportive community that offers accessible programs and services to meet diverse needs, ensuring that every resident feels a sense of belonging and has the resources necessary for a high quality of life. So some really good pieces that came out of here. 73% of people who responded feel a sense of belonging in Innisfail. Some of those great comments that came, there's good friends, family, and neighbors who help people feel they belong, or being able to participate or volunteer in community events and at the school are important to my well-being. So there was a really great kind of understanding of not only there's a really good level of well-being in the community, and also there's some really great suggestions of what really helps people feel a sense of well-being in the community and what helps them feel like they belong. 82% of respondents indicate they have friends or family they can rely on for help and support. Really, really great feedback there as well. That was part of when we looked at some of those early community pieces around community connection and community connectedness as early themes. This was our opportunity to check in. Does this resonate, and how does that work within the community? And there are some strong friends and family bonds in the community. 86% of people who responded have given time or resources over the last year to help friends and family in the community. That's a really, really high percentage percentage. We asked about volunteerism and volunteerism rates within the community, and that by and large was one of the highest proportion. The vast majority of the community provide support to themselves or to their friends and family throughout the year, whether that's childcare, whether that's assistance with moving, whether that's financial assistance, whether it's helping someone take out the garbage or shoveling someone's walks. There's a really great theme around that community support for each other and looking out for each other. 70% of respondents had volunteered their time in the last year with an institution, an organization, or a service group in Innisfail. Once again, that's a really, really high percentage of people who have volunteered at least once per year for an organization, institution, or service group. So once again, it's an opportunity to continue to leverage and grow and develop an area of strength for the community. And 92% report feeling either the same or a greater level of well-being than they did the year before. And that's a really great response as well. So there seems to be a very high level of community well-being. There are opportunities for sure. But we wanted to provide some of those shout outs here. So a couple of things, we asked the question, what helps you feel like you belong here in the community? And there were some strong themes that emerged. Things like community events and activities were really, really frequently mentioned. The personal relationships, people enjoy having good friends, family, and great neighbors in the community. There's a once again, we looked at that piece of volunteering. 70% of people have volunteered at least once in the last year with an organization in the community. And that shows up very strong here as well. That idea of engagement in local groups and services really supports a belonging and well-being for people. There's a supportive and welcoming environment that came out. You know, it's a town where people say hi, like everything in the community has to offer. The small town atmosphere shows up as well, right? Sometimes that's hard to define. But once again, it also is really important to that identity of the people who responded for the survey, that the small town atmosphere, you watch out for your neighbor and you enjoy the chats on your daily walk. That idea of being out and about in the community, feeling safe and secure and building social connections, as well as accessibility to community resources, right? It's a comfortable town. There's healthcare, the Legion, shopping. It's close to Red Deer, right? There's an accessibility of resources, and then also a shared values and heritage. There is that kind of, you know, pioneer farming heritage and spirit within Innisfail, and it's a community that attracts great families. And I think that was some really great feedback. There was also some great shout outs from public comments as well, mentioning specifically the mayor and council. There's a great breath of fresh air. You know, there's great policies and mindsets to move the town forward. And shout outs to the town administration and staff as well. The town and community groups are doing great jobs hosting events. There's great programs. Innisfail is working hard on organizing community events so everyone can participate, right? So there's some really great response around, you know, what helps people feel that sense of well-being and belonging. And I think those are some really, really strong responses. And once again, areas of strengths to build off of. Once again, we asked that same question around satisfaction, around well-being, and these responses are once again quite positive. There is that once again that kind of middle ground that that kind of sits there. People who are unsure, unaware, and that's okay. That's an opportunity of how do we move people into that positive sentiment. But you know, when we look at how would you rate your satisfaction with the town's efforts to support well-being, you know, well over 50% responded positively to that, with a group around 26% being in that you know, kind of middle ground, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. When we asked about how satisfied are you with the number of parks and natural assets available in Innisfail, really strong response there. And not surprising, that was one of the early themes as well. People love the natural spaces and the access to nature and the outdoors. You know, same thing, we asked around satisfaction with physical recreation opportunities. Over 60% of people responded positively to that. Once again, we're over 50% of people responded positively with the arts and culture opportunities. And once again, that one, there's a 30% either satisfied or dissatisfied, with about a 5% uncertain, which to me indicates there's an opportunity once again for the resources and assets that do exist in the community around that lens, being able to, you know, communicate at a broader level or introduce themselves to people who may not be aware they exist. And then we asked the question around the availability of social supports and services. That was once again relating back to those early themes around community supports. And what we see here is those who access them are by and large satisfied. Those who are in that neither satisfied nor dissatisfied or uncertain category, some of the comments, like once again, around the improvements were, oh, I've never had to access them, so I'm not sure. I can't answer that question. And I think that also kind of gives that idea that for those who are accessing community sports and services within Innisfail, by and large, are very satisfied with the services they're receiving. But there's also a large group of individuals who are not sure what's available or not within the community, which is unsurprising, but also, important to note. When we asked, what would be some opportunities to increase belonging or social well-being within the community, the big themes that came out, the first theme is really centered around communication, right? Enhancing communication and the information accessibility, and the town is doing some significant work around that. And this is one where when we dive into the next phase, we're going to be looking and asking the community for some more specific examples, because there's already a very great communication strategy in place. There's a lot of communication channels. And so that question becomes, okay, if there's all these communication channels, what would actually encourage people to access the information that's available to them? So there is communication out there. It's more the access to. Promoting town and community achievements, this came out quite strongly as well, right? And that relates back to that idea of promoting the community, or going back to that kind of public sentiment. There's amazing things happening in the community. There's some really great resources. There's some really great things happening, and it's being able to promote that and the achievements at a broader level. And improving public engagement and feedback opportunities also came up. And those are some kind of more in that communication realm. We look around the kind of the side of, I don't want to say specifically recreation, but more, I don't know, I could say institutions or that kind of side of things. And one of the things that came out was creating and promoting age-specific supports, and both youth and seniors came out here. So being able to build, especially youth, that came out as a really big primary theme, creating and promoting more supports for youth engagement throughout the community, as well as that are age-specific for seniors. And then, of course, the idea of, enhancing events, recreational and cultural facilities, and arts development. The community obviously really responds well to those community events that are happening. Those are really a kind of beacon for those who participate in them. And once again, how might we be able to enhance those, and also enhance some of the cultural and arts opportunities within the community? The other side, the other kind of area around that was along the lines of advocacy, or kind of intergovernmental advocacy. So the opportunity to advocate for better medical and educational support, which is something I know the town is already undertaking. Addressing transportation and mobility challenges. Some of this is related to kind of those normal pieces around, oh, how do we get around the community? But one of the biggest chunks of feedback from youth, when we went to the school and we were talking with youth, when we asked around, safety concerns or things around town, a lot of them related to, oh, well, the sidewalks are quite bumpy. It's hard to skateboard. Sometimes biking on the pathways and so it was also around infrastructure around that. And that's also where we talk about here mobility challenges or addressing transportation. Sometimes it's also the infrastructure itself, or the opportunities to address that. And then lastly, encouraging accessibility, inclusivity, and diversity in community programming. And so once again, just another area of opportunity to dig into as the project continues to move forward. When we asked around where would you allocate efforts and resources related to community safety and well-being, this is a question that's been asked in the last community safety surveys as well through the committee. And we reframed, kind of kept the same question this year as well. That's a great way to track year over year. What came out strongly, youth engagement and crime diversion were kind of the number one. Crime prevention was the number two. Identifying and addressing community safety hotspots was number three. Community events or activities to build well-being and belonging was number four. And those were kind of your top four. And then we see a little bit of a drop off there around crime and community safety communications being number five. And there's some kind of similarities between that. The thing that really stands out, and that we had great conversation at the committee level, and that we're doing some more digging into as well, is when we talk about youth engagement and crime diversion and the questions around youth, there's definitely, once again, we look at that perception and reality piece here, and that's a really big opportunity. When we look at crime statistics overall, and big nod to the RCMP and the partners on the committee there, we're able to provide some specific statistics. year over year, youth crime activity in the community of Innisfail has significantly reduced. And I believe it was a 50% reduction in the last year. And we look at a 20-year trend, there's a really big reductions as well. So that's one of those areas where there might be a perception around youth activities or youth crime or, youth involvement in kind of safety issues. The numbers don't necessarily support that when it comes to the crime statistics, which I think is once again that one of those important pieces as we move into strategy development, looking at, it's more around where youth are gathering that sometimes present that perception challenge. And that comes down to engagement with youth as well as some opportunities for some of that deeper component. So the kind of four big emerging strategic areas that we're hoping to explore as we move forward in this project. The first is around positive youth engagement. That obviously came out from a community lens. It also came out through our engagement with youth. It came out through the data from the survey. That there's an opportunity for, increased positive youth engagement. So that's one strategic area to look at. A second strategic area is the idea of how activating community spaces. How might we activate community spaces at a broader level? The municipality is doing a lot in that regard. There's also an opportunity. How can we unlock some of the community to continue to do the same? Or what might that look like? And so the idea of kind of the activating community spaces also comes from, the schools having a desire to increase the sentiment of that school campus being a community hub. Some of the early engagement we did with the administration in those schools as well. They want to see the community coming in, and there's some great partnerships already underway, and there's some really amazing things currently happening in the community. So taking some stock of that as well as looking at how might we increase that or what could be some opportunities to increase that. The idea of active and engaged communities and neighborhoods as well looks at, how might we continue to engage the community? Volunteerism was a really strong suit for the community. And so how might we leverage that further to build a little more, those who maybe aren't volunteering yet, how can we get them out in the community supporting things? But also what could it look like to maybe have more of that kind of community level driven engagement at the neighborhood level? And the last is around the idea of designing for safety. So in this case, we're looking in kind of, a few different directions. One being the idea of SEPDED, right? The idea of being able to create safety in spaces through environmental design, and being able to kind of, once again, this is kind of the idea of how might we address the idea of lighting. That was one of the kind of community concerns that came out around poor lighting. So the idea of designing for safety gives the opportunity to bring those pieces in that are very tangential around how might we be able to increase some of the lighting in certain areas, or things like that as well. Those are those four big themes that are kind of emerging from the work. And the next phase in the project, so next up, kind of the Innisfail and District Chamber of Commerce Trade Show. The Innisfail Policing and Safe Community Committee is going to be providing an overview of survey results, and they have a one-page summary of the survey results that they're planning to hand out, and that's been something they've done annually. They've usually turned around kind of an action plan as well. However, because this is now a little bit broader when we look at community safety and well-being, they're going to be providing the kind of early results from the survey. The big next piece is going to be community design labs on April 25th from 6 till 8 p.m. And the idea here is we're going to build community momentum through design. We've got an invite that's going to be ready to go out. And the idea is to invite community members using kind of targeted invitations. The committee is going to support that. And we want people to engage in thoughtful and meaningful ideation and action planning around those four strategic areas. Our goal with the design labs is at the end of the design labs to have enough kind of ideas and actions generated that Scott and myself and the team at BASA can now take that away and actually develop a bit of our strategic recommendations along with a draft action plan that can then be leveraged by the community, adapted or shifted and changed or customized as new things emerge over the next few years. But really looking at when we look at those strategic areas, what would some specific actions look like? And some of our goal along that is also being able to align, being able to kind of align, I don't want to say levels of responsibility, but being able to kind of look at action plans, not from the lens of this is everything for the town to do, but being able to identify, here's some opportunities for the town, here's some opportunities for the Community Policing and Safe Community Committee, but also here's some opportunities that are or actions that are community led or community driven themselves, where the responsibility lies maybe within community organizations or community initiatives themselves. Once we finish off those design labs, Scott and I and the team will be able to take that away. We'll be able to do add the data analysis around crime data and be able to put together the draft of the community safety and well-being strategy, which would then be able to move forward. So that is the overview of where the project is at currently, as well as next steps. So April 25th from 6 till 8 p.m. will be the community design labs. You will all be receiving invites as well as the mayor and members of council to come and participate in that opportunity as well. And with that, that's our update. We're open to taking questions. Scott, anything from you? I believe you're on mute.
No, we can turn the floor back over to Mayor Barclay.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Avery. It's a fantastic report. And does anyone have any questions? Councillor Bates.
Yeah, one question. And I think you alluded to it. For the Community Design Lab, will we be getting a summary sheet or something that will help us with our invitations that are coming out from the committee?
Yes, absolutely. We'll be working on drafting the invitations along with a summary sheet of what is a community design lab, what will you expect when you attend, and those pieces.
So then, what will be the means of delivering that? Will I be, as a committee member, be literally making face-to-face contact and handing an invitation to someone, or?
It'll likely be more of an email style invitation. If you prefer to do it in person, you certainly can as well. But we'll provide something that is more like email based, so it can be attached to an email along with a link for someone to register, so we have a good understanding of who's coming and what the numbers look like.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Heistad.
Yeah, no, I want to thank you guys for the work you're doing with the committee. I know that I've been on the committee for the last 2.5 years, but this is really, helps push things forward. I want to thank CAO Becker for the work that you've done the last 3.5, 4 years on this committee with some of our committee members that have been there for a number of years. So I think the big thing for myself is, like Councillor Bates said, is the getting it out to the community. But I think the important piece is the young people as well, especially for the community design labs. So thanks to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'd like to echo Councillor Heistad's comments. I've appreciated all of the work, and I think that this report is excellent. In looking at the demographics of the respondents, I noticed that really it's 10% under the age of 20, but yet lots of feedback from the community, that the rest of the community that responded around the need for more youth engagement. So I'm hopeful as you prepare for the community design labs that you have some way of perhaps increasing the number of youth from the community from that 20 to a larger group. I certainly hear it in the community often, and I see it on social media too, that there's nothing for kids to do in Innisfail. So I would really like to know what that means when programs are provided, if people don't come, all of that kind of stuff. I would really like to be able to probe more into the thinking around what does youth engagement look like, and how can we help to create a community that builds that capacity. Thank you.
It's a really great perspective. Thank you very much, Councillor. And one of the things that we've done is working with the committee, we're looking at the feasibility of hosting a design lab at the schools with a group of youth themselves to ask very similar questions.
That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's our goal. So we're working towards that.
Excellent.
Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, I think that's it. Again, thank you so much, Scott and Avery. Fantastic. And we look forward to April 25th. Does administration have anything, CEO Becker? No? Okay. All right.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
You bet.
All right, we will move into 4.3 with CEO Becker, strategic priorities update.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, Hello Council. Just like to walk through an updated version of your, the strategic priorities. It's up to you to decide if these line up with your priorities. It ties it into administrative priorities too, and we'll just walk through and if there's any updates from administration. But the biggest change, I believe, is the very first one that's listed there, based on the recent conversations council's had regarding drought and water shortage. The idea here is to confirm this, but work towards developments, working with different stakeholders on a drought and water shortage plan. Obviously, the province is forecasting the risk of drought and water shortage, and through the leadership of you, council, but also the administrative team, is to making sure we're working towards a plan, a strategy. And when I say a plan, which is already in the making through the leadership of Director Kennedy, such things in the plan would be a water system overview, perhaps on education at council and members of the community, water metering system, a review of the utilities bylaw, council's directive of updating the conservation policies, such as the low flow toilets, for example, et cetera. And of course, most importantly, and it would be as development and education plan for the community. So that's when I say a water plan or water shortage plan, that's what I'm saying is all inclusive of those types of steps. So through the director, those items have started. I know Councillor Bates would indicate that the Water Commission has supported council's recommendation to develop a regional template, and I'll let him speak to that. But I just want to stop there for a second as a new priority for your consideration.
Councillor Bates?
Well, I guess as you can see later in the correspondence, I think we've been updated by Minister Schultz that they've given a bit of an extension, and I do know there's how do I say this? Because it's somewhat confidential at this point. I've asked our commission to issue a statement that I can update everybody with, and that will happen. And in the interim, yes, we've had our resolution adopted that there be an overarching structure developed by the technical committee, and then that'll be handed back, and we'll work on a drought management plan that specific to Innisfail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, CEO, I see on the priority is Q2, and I guess my concern is, you know, are we going to get into this situation prior to Q2, and or do we have steps that we'll kind of lay out as we go along that maybe addresses this a little bit sooner, as far as the communication piece, as an example?
Yeah, good question, Mayor Barclay. Actually, I would reference we are in Q2, so this is a priority, immediate priority. Yeah, so yeah. That's right, as of today, we're in Q2, so yeah, it's immediate priority. Yeah. If there's nothing else, I'll keep walking through, and if there's any questions. Government relations strategies, it is part of the rest of your agenda. There's a couple items in relation. Council made it clear to develop a government relations framework, which is has started, has been deferred a little bit just through other pressing needs, but it is something hopefully by next AMP you'll have a draft, and hopefully I can't quite commit to it, but we're working on it diligently, and I know it's an important document for you, so it is in the works. Again, working within that Q2 as an outcome. And council's other highest priority is put as a tax policy review, and I'll let the director speak to this one coming down into her section here shortly, just on where she's at with that and her other commitments she's working on. Just going down to the CAO area, Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, although it's under my area, it's really deferred to the Manager of Fire and Protective Services, supported by the Director of Community Services and the Manager of so there's a few hands in on this. So there's been a great support by Community Services Department with the Fire and Protective Services. So that's, as you heard today, that's moving forward. I already talked to government relations strategy, which is assigned to me and my staff, and Innisfail Energy Hub. And again, my priorities, they should not be with me because I'm really the head, like, titled with this, but right now through the director and her team, communications coordinator's doing a great job. You'll see the result of that this weekend at the trade show. So there's a few things going on, and we will reevaluate this priority following the trade show this coming weekend. So I'll move it down to corporate services. Just any update, Director, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Barclay and Council. So my first priority is the tax policy review. So we are in the middle of developing a template or a preliminary scope to bring to Council for formal direction and I guess approval of scope. 2023 year end is kind of been my big priority the last couple of months. Each year we are required by Municipal Affairs and the Municipal Government Act to prepare annual financial audited statements and have them submitted by May 1st of each year. So right now we have wrapped up our year-end procedures and our final testing on site. So we are about 75% of the way completed. So we are still hopefully presenting to Council on April 22nd. The Clean Energy Improvement Program will be a big program and bylaw that will have to be brought before Council for implementation. If we can get it implemented by third quarter of 2024, this program would be implemented for the tax year cycle of next year. As well as the policy and bylaw updates, things get added and removed to this as we go through. So as you can see, we've completed the budget policy, surplus policy, taxi bylaw, the council procedure bylaw, volunteer policy, employee policy, and traffic bylaw. And we still have a few more to get through on that. But again, this is a rotating list. Things will come off, new ones will be added on as priorities change. So.
My turn, I guess. Yeah, operational services, so Aquatic Center, that's on the list still. Hopefully with some progress here in the second quarter. As the CAO already mentioned, the drought and water shortage plan, so that's more in collaboration with the technical committee with Mountview Regional. 2023 capital projects, we have a bit of carryover on 2 of the projects there, so we'll be looking to get those done in this quarter. Southwest Residential or Industrial Park, sorry, pretty much complete. Small carryover for paving, otherwise that industrial park will be completed. Southwest Solar Farm, we have submitted through the AIC, have provided them some feedback, so that's underway as well. And asset management, continual, that's just every, just continual progress on the asset management. Working on asset management plans, as well as updating the 5 and 10-year capital. So we'll continue on those. And then 2024 capital, we've tendered out the surface improvements as of last week, awarded that to Border Paving, and then working on the tender for the second project for that capital. So that'll happen here in the second quarter with construction third and fourth quarter. So.
All right, so for community services, housing continues to be one of our main focus areas. Continued work on the MDP plan update, as well as the development concepts for the Southwest residential area, as well as working with a potential developer in the commercial area. Continuing to work on housing plan actions coming out of that plan, and getting the homes going in Napoleon Meadows. Probably see the other 3 break ground here in the next week and a half. So that's been going well, lots of interest, lots of positive activity both on the houses as well as on the lots in Napoleon. Next one, so Southwest Industrial Land Sales. As has been discussed, the lots are essentially ready now for purchase and construction. This will be part of John's role as well as working on that marketing and really getting a push going on getting those lots sold. Sustainability and climate action. This one probably needs a little more focus that shifts as things come up, but hoping as we work through the balance of the year, we'll be able to get back to looking at the next milestones within that Partners in Climate Protection program, which is really working with council and starting to set targets and making some plans moving forward in terms of our sustainability and GHG emissions. Community Ec Dev, so continuing to finish out the cultivating investment project. So that's the project that we received the Regional Economic Development Grant for. We had our second Power Play speaker series earlier in March, and then really focusing, working with John and getting him up to speed and pushing forward those Power Place actions. Aquatic Center project, so depending where we move, scope development and implementation, hopefully in the next couple of months. Transportation, the PACE transportation contract is up for renewal, so that'll be coming to council later in April. And then working with the facilities manager on 2024 capital, getting the tenders out for various projects. I believe the arena flooring is out right now, and the arena sound system should be coming out ASAP, as well as a number of other projects.
Okay, thank you very much, administration. And anybody have any questions? No? Okay. I'll just have someone make a motion then that we accept the strategic priorities as information.
Mayor
Councillor
Barclay, I'll
Dunham?
make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Carried. And we will now move into Council Advocacy Report with CEO Becker.
Thank you. So as the report states, and as previously noted in the STRAT priorities conversation, administration presented Alberta municipalities resolution preparation information to you council in February, and also provided a list of energy-related resolution topics at the March 4th AMP meeting. Council demonstrated interest to focusing on energy policy gaps for consideration to advance an advocacy to governments or to other stakeholders in relation. Just to update you, administration had discussions with different energy professionals, and administration did talk to you about a month ago regarding demand-side managements. I just want to provide a little bit of updates on this area and a few other areas. Following the AAM, Alberta Communities Leadership Caucus, Mayor Barclay and I pulled a government official aside following the sessions just to talk about some of our projects, but also demand-side managements. And what we're picking up through government is there's not a statement of we're doing DSM, but they're demonstrating a movement of components of DSM within their policy development, which is good news. So again, they're not stating we're doing DSM, but there's indications of different pieces of the DSM associated with what they're advancing in their policy. So the idea was to advocate to government, or AM to government, to have government work into DSM, but this time my recommendation to you for your consideration is to not advance advocacy in relation to DSM, just due to there's enough action that we're seeing with the government regarding DSM, if that makes sense. So other pieces that we chatted about was intermunicipal conversations. As we know, we're going to be meeting with, we being you, council, are going to meet with the county in the near future. And we're just developing an agenda for discussion, consideration currently. Also, we would like to meet with our intermunicipal development plan committee internally, which is members of council and supported by administration, just to have a conversation what IDP is, what that means for regional collaboration. So I'd like to work internally and then likely move into a more regional conversation at a later time. We did talk about the QE2 South overpass with the east side of that overpass, noticing the lack of lights. And so that information was forwarded on to government officials for consideration to update that area with some infrastructure for safety reasons. Aquatic Center funding, recently made contact with the Alberta Recreation Parks Association, which would have their pulse on funding or lack of funding associated with recreation facilities, and have not heard back from ARPA. And this may trigger council's interest to have further dialogue regarding recreation funding opportunities. No action on number 5 and 6. And then I did mention DSM through number 7. So that's my report, council. If there's anything that really comes to mind within this report or outside your report that you really feel you should focus in on advocacy, certainly looking for your feedback and direction.
Okay, thank you, CEO Becker. So since likely DSM is off the list for resolution at AM, maybe look at something else, putting it on. So I know we spoke about recreation, and might be some other things that the council would like to chat about, but would you like to have that on the agenda for next week, or talk about it now, or?
Whenever council wishes and has time to dedicate some time, obviously soon, just due to the time to work towards developing a resolution framework for your consideration.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything other than recreation funding? We've talked a lot about that recently. Would we like to take a resolution forward to Alberta municipalities around recreation funding? As I said, I know it was a topic at mid-size Mayor's Towns Caucus. Everybody's very supportive of that conversation because everybody's struggling. And or we can wait till next week and everybody can give it some thought and bring something else forward. Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, I would agree that this is a topic that we should be advocating for with other communities, and we should be bringing it forward next week as well. So, thanks.
So, CEO Becker, did you want to maybe just have it on the agenda for next week, and we'll...
Yeah, if council's okay, we will do some preliminary work. Hopefully we'll talk to ARPA and we'll put in the CA report for their discussion.
Maybe reach out to AM as well, see if anybody else
Yeah,
is
definitely.
putting this forward, and maybe also Mayor Thorne and Okotoks.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're looking to do something too,
Sure.
so. Okay, so we'll just have a motion then to accept council advocacy as information. Councillor Wing.
Barclay will make that motion.
Yep, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to Innisfail procurement policy.
Yes, thank you,
Director
Mayor
Beck.
Barclay. So back on March 11th, Council had made a motion directing administration to bring back information regarding procurement at a future meeting. So we are bringing that here today. We do have our procurement policy attached to the report for your review. So in January of 2016, a procurement policy was presented to Council for approval, and the purpose of the policy was to maintain financial flexibility, viability, and efficiency in procurement activities, and to uphold fairness and equal application of the policy. The policy outlines that the town is committed to creating and maintaining a high level of confidence in its procurement of goods and services by ensuring integrity, transparency, accountability, efficiency, and consistency in its procurement process, while acting within its authority under the Municipal Government Act, Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, which is replaced the AIT agreement, and the New West Partnership Trade Agreement. And we're also a party to a few domestic trade agreements, the two being the New West Trade Partnership Agreement and the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Now, we had the documents actually attached in here. They're quite large. It made the whole agenda very big, so we really just embedded the PDFs right into the document. If anyone is having issues gaining access to these, I can always email you a PDF copy. Juanita, would you go to the PowerPoint portion? Okay, so this one is just telling us that so we're a party to 2 domestic trade agreements, which is the newest trade partnership agreement and the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. So the newest partnership trade agreement, it came into effect in 2010, is a trade agreement between the provinces of Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. It establishes Canada's largest intraprovincial barrier-free marketplace. It creates a framework for cooperation to bolster the economy in Western Canada and represents an economic powerhouse of more than 11 million people with a combined GDP of over $720 billion. The NWPTA provides a comprehensive framework to enhance trade, investment, and labor mobility within the 4 provinces. So the CFTA, which is the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, it came into effect on July 1st, 2017. It is an agreement between the federal, provincial, and territorial governments that seeks to eliminate trade barriers to the free movements of persons, goods, services, and investments within Canada. Building upon its predecessor, the Agreement on International Trade, or it's referenced as AIT in some places, the CFTA establishes a comprehensive and modern framework for international trade in Canada. The CFTA provides a clear set of trade rules that will make it easier for Alberta businesses to access opportunities from coast to coast. So procurement obligations under the trade agreements are only triggered when a procuring entity completes a procurement valued at or above certain specified thresholds. A procurement that falls below the applicable threshold is not subject to the procurement obligations of any of the trade agreements. So the 2 thresholds that we have to fall under are here. So we fall under the MASH. We are a municipality, which is the M under MASH. And we have to follow the NWPTA. It is the most restrictive threshold, so that's the one that we have to meet each time. So if you can see for goods and services, it's both 75,000 and construction is 200,000. So again, the next one is just what the MASH sector refers to, so regional, local, district, or other forms of municipal government, that's where we fall in. So the general obligations under all the trade agreements, procuring entities must ensure that covered procurements meet the following of 4 general obligations. So the first one is openness. So all eligible suppliers that meet the essential requirements for a specific covered procurement must be given the opportunity to submit a tender. So we can't stop someone from submitting a tender to us, right? So the next one is non-discrimination. So procuring entities must accord no less favorable treatment to goods, services, and suppliers of other jurisdictions that are parties to a trade agreement than the best treatment the procuring entity provides to goods, services, and suppliers of their own or any other jurisdiction. Non-circumvention. So procuring entities must not prepare, design, or otherwise structure a procurement or select a valuation method or divide procurement requirements in order to avoid the obligations of a trade agreement. What that means is if we have a procurement, we are not eligible to break it apart to bring things under procurement thresholds in order to circumvent the rules of this agreement. And where a procuring entity uses a third party to conduct procurements on its behalf, the third party must ensure such procurements meet the procuring entity's trade agreement procurement obligations. So this happens in a number of areas, one being something like a Tagish or an Altera, who does our engineering before us, has to follow our own procurement agreements, as well as we're part of bulk buying groups through AUMA. They also have to follow the same procurement trade agreements for a MASH because they are procuring for municipalities. And transparency. So procuring entities must post their tender notices on the province's designated electronic tendering system or system. So ours is APC, which is Alberta Purchasing Connection. We must provide copies of our procurement policies upon request, provide any requested documents in a non-discriminatory manner. Upon request, provide promptly any information necessary to determine whether a procurement was conducted fairly, impartially, and in accordance with the applicable obligations, as well as publish award information in a timely manner. So typically this has to be done within 72 days of awarding the contract. We actually have to post on APC who won, the details, and the amount is public for everyone's knowledge. Procuring entities are not required to disclose any information that would be contrary to the Freedom of Information or privacy legislation, that would impede any law enforcement activities. prejudice the legitimate commercial interests of particular enterprises, including suppliers, involve a waiver of privilege, or otherwise be contrary to the public interest. So this list is inside the newest trade partnership agreement, and it's a list of practices that are considered inconsistent with the openness, non-circumvention, non-discrimination, or transparency obligations. So A is extending a preference for local or domestic goods, services, or suppliers, imposing conditions on the invitation to tender, registration requirements, or qualification procedures based on the location of a supplier's place of business, using a technical specification or conformity assessment procedure with the purpose of or effect of creating unnecessary obstacles to trade, scheduling events in the tender process to prevent suppliers from submitting a tender, specifying quantities or delivery schedules in a way that may reasonably be judged as deliberately designed to prevent suppliers from meeting the requirement of the procurement, using price discounts or preferential margins to favor particular suppliers, applying fees or other costs to particular suppliers except to the extent that any difference can be justified by an actual cost of service differential, limiting participation in a procurement only to suppliers that have previously been awarded one or more contracts by a procuring entity, requiring prior experience that is not essential to meet the requirements of the procurement, providing information so as to give one supplier an advantage over other suppliers, and dividing required quantities or diverting funds to non-covered subsidiary agencies in a manner designed to avoid otherwise applicable obligations. Did anyone have any questions on that before we go forward?
Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, through to Director Vickers. I just want to go back to transparency, section 1E. Publicizing the award. How do we do that? Do we just do that through like the Albertan, or do you individual contact, or?
Mayor Barclay, through to Councillor Harrison. So that is done through the APC portal, which is the Alberta Purchasing Connection. We post all tenders there, and once we've awarded it, we do have an obligation within 72 days to post who has won.
So was that passed along to the people that had submitted a tender, that they can go and have a look and see what the prices were?
That's correct. So
Okay.
anyone who's submitted a tender on one of our tenders and they didn't win it, they can log in to see who won it and for what value.
And they're advised of that somewhere along the line to?
Yeah, it's an item that you can do it through the APC portal, so anyone who uses it would know that that is available there.
I guess the reason I ask that is, you know, we've had feedback, some of it negative, about not awarding local contracts and that kind of thing. And you look at these rules, they're pretty site specific. And I guess my question would be, as long as they're aware of what we're dealing with, it may eliminate or alleviate a lot of the problems that we have when they come back and say, well, why didn't I get the tender? I live in town, and all of that other stuff. So I think this is really good. So I thank you for that.
And really, the things posted on APC are only anything that's above those thresholds. Anything below that, we don't have to put on APC, and we wouldn't identify that in that way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Heistad?
No, I agree with, thanks to Dawn asking that question. And that was what I was going to ask when we were going through the information here. But I think the big thing is the only way, if they didn't know how to go through the portal, I think that may be an issue. But if it's community, you know, we have community vendors coming through, I think it'd be our due diligence to contact them as well, to have them go through that portal. Yeah, it gets awkward at times, but good question, Don, thanks.
Perfect. And sometimes it's not the price, it could be the scoring that we post on APC. So provided it's not used by the procuring entity to avoid competition, discriminate between suppliers, or protect local suppliers, procuring entities may evaluate any or all of the following factors if such factors have been specified in the tender notice or tender documentation. So one thing, when we do put a tender document, we have to tell everyone how we're grading the tender documents. So if we're doing 50% price, 25% something else, we have to tell everyone so everyone knows how we're going to be grading these tenders ahead of time. So these are the following items that the newest trade partnership agreement, as well as the CFTA, says that we're allowed to evaluate on. So obviously, the first one is quality, quantity, price, or other cost factors, technical merit, the equivalency of goods or services proposed by a supplier as being equivalent to the stated technical requirements. So if we've asked for A and did even say that you could provide an alternative, we still get to evaluate that alternative and how it relates to the main one. Terms of delivery, servicing and warranty, transitional implications, the capacity of the supplier to meet the requirements of the procurement, the professional competence, managerial ability, corporate stability, and business integrity, relevant prior experience, the caliber, experience, and availability of staff proposed. In some tender documents, we actually ask them to provide the list of staff members that will be working on our case, and we are eligible to rate those staff members. The ability to meet site, climactic, public safety, code, design, permitting, and other project-related requirements, and any other factor related to the procurement. So that's kind of that catch-all. We just have to tell everyone what that is. So this one is kind of maybe some scary numbers. These are the maximum fines that anyone would be given. It would be unlikely that we would be levied those level of fines. It is somehow tied to the level of procurement. So what would happen is if we have $1 million procurement out there and we've awarded it improperly, a complaint would go somewhere in municipal affairs, some department, and they would do an investigation. The penalty likely could be that we still have to pay the other person's entire contract of $1 million, as well as be levied a fine, like a penalty that is an administrative penalty. It is intended to feel the burn a little bit, right? And the last slide here, at the 2023 AB Munis Convention, a resolution was put forward by the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo and Lac La Biche County. It is said that it is therefore resolved that Alberta municipalities advocate for the provincial government to abolish the NWPTA as it would permit greater opportunities for local sourcing. So the motion was adopted at last conference, and they are currently taking action to further that motion or that resolution. So I'm open for questions.
Well, thank you. And I know municipality of Wood Buffalo has gone down that social procurement path, as has, I believe, the City of Lethbridge, City of Calgary. And I guess I look at this and I get it, but I'm curious how other municipalities are doing it, like the City of Vancouver, or many communities in British Columbia, or kind of going down a little different path. And it was interesting because I was on Alberta government site the other day. It was water, wastewater, of course, all this grant money's available. And on there was a notice that you should be choosing Alberta companies if you can. And I'm thinking, well, it's interesting considering.
It's going against their very
documents.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if there's any way of, and I don't mean getting around this, but, and I'm not going to fob it onto administration now, you guys are busy enough, but maybe in the fall we can have a conversation about social procurement. I know we kind of went down that path a little bit at the start of this term, and then it hasn't been a priority, but I'm curious about that, and, community benefit agreements, and especially when we see $54,000 in applications coming in and $20,000 to hand out. So at some point, when you have time. And thanks for the advice a couple of meetings ago. Anybody have any questions? Just have a motion then to accept this report as information. Thanks, Director Vickers. Councillor Bates.
Sure, I'll move that we accept this report as information.
Okay, thanks. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll move into correspondence. So we have a request here from the Innisfail Eagles. Can't make a motion today for it, but we could discuss it since we have an Innisfail Eagle here.
I'll jump in. Yeah. No, I think it'd be great to sponsor our Innisfail Eagles senior men's team. That's my opinion. They're going to the national championships April 20th to 27th in Dundas, Ontario. And, you know, I think it'd be fair. I've seen a couple groups come in and ask for money in the last couple weeks, week and a half or whatever. And just me personally, I think it'd be fair offhand, $1,500 to, it would be the helmet sponsorship. If I'm looking at being transparent and fair with the other groups coming in, that's how I'm looking at it, if we can do that eventually, potentially.
I think we gave 1,500 last year, correct? 1,500
Yeah.
last year. Anybody else? Councillor Wing?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, I'd like to speak in support of Councillor Heistad's motion. The Eagles currently have 16 Central Alberta players on their team, and if we go back to an earlier conversation in talking about, you know, local folks and people from the region that are accessing our facilities, not only are they accessing our facilities, but they're bringing our community into those facilities. I know we spend a lot of time as a community and a council thinking about minor sports and how we engage our kids and our youth, but in my opinion, this men's AAA team does a really good job of engaging the community. It brings in good crowds, and as we are currently pounding the pavement like crazy, raising money through sponsorships. There'll be 2 events, special events that are held in the coming weeks as well. We have strong communities. The Eagles have presented themselves as strong community supporters. They've raised money for the food bank over the years. They support minor sports. Currently, they've had a partnership with lacrosse and Innisfail minor hockey. And I think that it's really important for our town to be recognized at a national event. I'd like to see the town of Innisfail when I'm watching those games in April coming out of Dundas. So I would support that motion. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not a motion, just so you're clear. We'll have a motion next week, and
The way the council, it'd be a recommendation, the regular council, to what extent you want to sponsor.
yeah. So Councillor Heistad, just make a recommendation for
Just
next
to
week
recommend,
for 1,500.
that's a recommendation for the helmet sponsorship, $1,500 for next week.
Yeah, perfect. Anybody else have comments?
Just a
Councillor
question, through, you're with Innisfail Eagles? Okay, well, welcome to our chambers. The question that I have, sir, is we're going to get, if we decide to go with the 1,500, the 1 inch by 1 inch sticker on the helmet, that's not very big. Could we, can we get it bigger? Okay.
The design of the helmet, it would twist the sticker, and it's the only real way of doing it.
Okay. No.
The NHL did go in a way that their helmets have sponsorship on the side of their helmets.
Yeah.
It's not something that this time we really want to go into. I mean, that would be a
Okay.
conversation next year when we decide to potentially close
Okay.
down of doing something like that. I mean, just the route that we've gone, but to have
Yep.
1 inch by 1 inch, it's not very visible when you're in the crowd, but we will take pictures, we'll share on social media.
Okay.
That's the intent. Like, we have these in our disposal now that we can take the photos, we can share all over
Sure.
social media, and then it'll get out there that, you know, the town of Innisfail is a major sponsor of ours on this run.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bates?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to suggest, and of course we'll get to the motion, but we don't need the swag. You can use that in other ways to promote your organization, so we don't fight over it.
Yeah, no, fully supportive. So we have a motion that we will recommend this to council next week. All in favor? All right, carried. We'll just keep going through the correspondence. Anita, thanks. Okay, and we'll just have somebody make a motion that we accept the correspondence as information. Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and then we'll start roundtable. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So last week was the Innisfail Public Library Board meeting, and then this week coming up, I'll be participating at the budget open house. I'll be Parkland Library meeting on Friday, and then 2 days at the Friday evening and Saturday at the trade show. So a busy week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bates.
Yeah, so really all I had last week was another Water Commission water sharing discussion, which led to the comments that I made earlier. Other things I did last week were personal. My granddaughter did win the U16 Western Canadian Championships in Ringette. And my son proudly got in on the first edition of King's Counsel designation for lawyers, so that was pretty cool. This week I have the budget presentation. In the middle of signing up for trade show, both for the or all three for the town, police and safe communities and MDP. And Councillor Heistad has asked me to attend the Historical Village meeting on Wednesday.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Another quiet week. I do have the trade show coming up. I do have the budget presentations Thursday night. Looking forward to those. And congratulations, Grandpa and Dad. That's about it.
Thank you. Councillor Heistad.
Thanks, Your Worship. I got actually delegated that village meeting to my good friend Gav. No, I appreciate that, Gavin, because I'm going to Vancouver for a couple days with our Councillor Bates in Vancouver. So if you hear of anybody being thrown off the C bus, it's probably me, because Claire's hanging out with me for 2 days. Got budget deliberation on the Thursday evening, and I better get back to Juanita on my time for a trade share show. I'll do that this afternoon. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'll be submitting my form next week for presentation on the regular council meeting 2 weeks, but I was at CSSC last week in the CED. I will be attending a Parkland Foundation meeting this week, as well as volunteering at the trade show this weekend.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I got to attend the Equus AGM last week with our CAO in place of Mayor Barclay, and that was a well-attended event. It was enjoyable to be there. Going to the public budget engagement on Thursday, trade show with the town and the chamber on the weekend, and next week attending the Economic Development Association of Alberta conference, and I've asked my council colleague, Councillor Wing, to attend one of my committee meetings with FCSS. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, Deputy Mayor Dunham was not available for Equus, and he wasn't available for the Child Advocacy Centre either. So Councillor Wing's going to that. So we'll catch you one of these days. I'll do a report next week. One thing that is coming up for Innisfail is the National Boys Golf Championship, August 12th to 16th. Had our first meeting last week. There'll be 156 players in Innisfail that week, along with parents, grandparents, siblings. So it will be a big week for Innisfail. On the Friday before, there's a qualifying, so there'll be 60 qualifiers on the Friday going after 3 spots in the tournament. So yeah, it'll be lots of fun. They've also secured the 2026 Canadian Senior Women's Championship as well at the Innisfail Golf Course. So pretty big stuff happening, and be a lot of people coming into our community that week. So lots to work on. Yeah, and I'll do the rest of the report next week. So we'll go into upcoming events. And just a motion to accept this as information. Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barclay will make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And then a motion to go in camera.
I move
Councillor
that we
Messaros.
go in camera.
Thank you. All in favor?